Let's talk about Ryan's favorite member of Congress, Dan Goldman from New York, who I think has been trying out, he's been tasked with trying out the Biden allies' new spin narrative, their talking points when it comes to the allegations against Joe Biden pertaining to Hunter Biden and James Biden and all of the Bidens, basically financial interests and business interests. We have a SOT we're going to play. Let's roll C1 first, and we'll get into it.
Could you just, with specifics, tell us these phone calls that were a matter of such discussion yesterday, like what were they about? What would then Vice President Biden say in these conversations? You know, walk us through what happened.
Right. So let's put this in context. Beau Biden got very sick in early 2015. He died in the spring of 2015, which was right in the middle when Devon Archer had his business dealings with Hunter Biden. At that point, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden began to speak every day because they were both devastated by Beau's death. They spoke every day. The witness testified that over his 10-year relationship with Hunter Biden, there may be approximately 20 times when in one of those conversations, Hunter Biden would put his father at a dinner, not at a business meeting, at a dinner that he was having if he happened to get a hold of his father, and would ask his father to say hello to whoever was at the table. And that was essentially the extent of it. It was unclear. And the witness testified, this is not me saying that, the witness testified that a lot of times, most of the time, Joe didn't even know who the people were at the dinner table.
It gets better. So that's Dan Goldman. He is a member of the House Oversight Committee, meaning he was in the closed-door testimony with Devon Archer, and that was MSNBC's Morning Joe, asking him to kind of debrief what he heard in that testimony. He claims Archer debunked the entire narrative, basically, which we can get into in just a moment. Let's also play Representative Himes on, I think this was also MSNBC. This is C2.
The Republicans, it's just this internal primal urge to visit retribution on the Democrats. And the problem is they can't find a fact. So, look, is there problematic questions about Hunter Biden? And I said something that shouldn't be controversial, which is that if you committed a crime, you should be held accountable. But have they pointed to anything to suggest that Joe Biden engaged in corrupt behavior? No. And on the contrary, Hunter Biden's business partner said, yeah, he was on some phone calls talking about the weather. Exchanging pleasantries. You know, is that in the category of, presidential family members that are problematic? Billy Carter, Hugh Rodham, maybe it's in that category, but it is sure and absolutely not a crime.
Okay, so first we have the gross invocation from Dan Goldman of the Biden family tragedy as it pertains to Beau Biden, as though that would somehow prevent Joe Biden from fundamentally understanding right and wrong as a man who's been in Washington, D.C. And representing, we should add, Delaware for decades, as though he doesn't understand the ethics of business interests in government, and that would somehow reasonably cloud his judgment in a way that makes it hard for us to judge him as voters, as citizens now. And then you have Jim Himes saying, they were talking about the weather, according to Devon Archer. And if we go out of order here, I'm so sorry, if we could put C4 up on the screen. This is a tweet from Tom Bevan reacting to reporting that the Bidens were using burner phones. And Tom quotes, need burner phones to talk about the weather because Biden told Archer to get burner phones. And this is just 3 days before there was a meeting with Joe Biden at the White House. So they were just using those burner phones to talk about the weather, as Tom jokes. So, Ryan, what is your reaction to what seems like a coordinated, and it's hardly unusual to have coordinated talking points, be trotted out by people when they're defending a politician under fire? What do you make of these new defenses from Democrats?
Well, let me first say that Joe Biden has been much more involved with his kind of family's finances than I think people understand. And I've done a lot of reporting on this in the past, and people can look up some of my older reporting on Joe Biden, James Biden, Hunter Biden, going back to the 90s and the 2000s. And so I think we have to bear that context in mind as we're thinking through what Biden's role was here. At the same time, I would say that if Biden is getting on the phone with Hunter Biden and making pleasantries to, let's say business partners at a dinner, unless Republicans can come up with something more than that, like unless they can prove or show, or have some kind of evidence that that Biden was getting paid, or that Biden was aware of who those people were, then I don't think they have what they think they have here. Now, I do think it's fair to say that Joe Biden knows that Hunter Biden, oftentimes when he's putting them on speakerphone, is doing it so that he can impress people, and oftentimes those people are ones who are paying him for his last name and for his access. And I think if you're a liberal kind of watching this right now, you should think about that. Think about what is Biden. What does Biden think in that moment? And he probably knows exactly what's going on. Now, this idea from Comer that therefore Joe Biden is guilty of being a foreign agent, I don't think has been remotely proven, because you'd have to show that Biden did something. Now, okay, yes, Biden did fire this Ukrainian prosecutor fired who was investigating Burisma, but that was also American policy at the time. So you can't really hang your case on that. Was there anything else that Biden did when it came to Romania or China or anything else related? Those things remain just allegations, not even specific allegations, just kind of broad kind of smoke. There is a lot of smoke, and I do think that it was unethical, and I think that Hunter Biden was exploiting his father's grief at that time. It is one thing to talk every day in this period of grief. It is another thing to put your dad on speakerphone when you're at a dinner party with your business partners. Like that, you don't get the kind of grief exception for that move. You know what you're doing there.
And that is so interesting.
Yeah.
No, that's so interesting, because I think that's why they were doing this, right? Like, Joe Biden is not a stupid man when it comes to the blurring of line between government and business. Again, like, the man represented Delaware for decades. Like, he absolutely understands, as a man who's in the Senate for a very long time, exactly how these things are supposed to work, exactly how influence peddling works. He's been the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Like, he absolutely knows what these things are, and that's why I actually think this is a really good point, because what Republicans are, very, they really feel like each new revelation gets them closer to maybe an impeachment hearing being opened. And we talked last week about Kevin McCarthy floating that if people stop cooperating, and obviously Archer ended up actually testifying. So maybe if that was subtly about Archer or about other things, that's off the table for the speaker now. I don't know. But fundamentally, why would Joe Biden allow Hunter Biden to come with him on Air Force Two? Why would Joe Biden stop by Cafe Milano, where he knows damn well that Hunter Biden's clients are there, and seeing him is what gets Hunter the money? Why would he say, quote, "I hope you know what you're doing"? That's his own admission to Hunter Biden when he takes on Burisma as a client, when Joe Biden has been fingered by the Obama administration to lead the Ukraine cause for the Obama White House? Well, because there's always plausible deniability with something like this. All Hunter Biden needs is the Biden last name. Joe Biden doesn't need to actually do anything other than hit the links, go to the golf course with Hunter's clients, go to Cafe Milano, be on speakerphone, and as long as he actually doesn't have to talk about business at all. I find it extremely hard to believe that never happened in any sort of broad context whatsoever. In fact, I'm sure that it did. But unless you have a smoking gun audio of that conversation and Joe Biden, being explicit about any sort of quid pro quo, which, again, like, that's what's so slimy about this, is that he knows there's always plausible deniability. He knows that all he has to do is show up and show these clients that Hunter is in contact with his father. That's all he has to do. And Hunter can talk to other people that are not his father, that can maybe advance his policy interests. And that's where I think Republicans would be wise to focus on for the future. are there people that aren't on the Biden administration sanctions list that were, in Russia and Ukraine that are tied to Hunter Biden? Are there results that we can see sort of tangibly, directly, whether it was in the Obama administration or the Biden administration? When it came to Tony Podesta, you could look at how many meetings he had with Clinton's State Department, for instance, as he was representing Yanukovych with Paul Manafort when it came to Ukraine. Like, you can look, there are things you can do to show what tangible results were. So I'm interested in where that conversation goes. But to your point, I actually think that's so interesting. I don't know that they're ever going to get a smoking gun, precisely because you don't ever need a smoking gun to do influence peddling in this country.
I think it's also possible that Hunter Biden, in the grips of a multi-year bender, didn't actually do much. That he was exploiting his father, exploiting his last name, and then exploiting all of his clients, pocketing the money and spending it just as fast without actually kind of delivering. And I wonder if his not showing up for work is one of the things that could in the end get him off of a FARA charge. So yes, because really you have to spend a certain amount of your time doing lobbying. I think it's more than 20% of your time doing work. Or you have to do something material to benefit these clients. And you'd be like, well, guess what? I was on Skid Row. I was not actually lobbying on behalf of these Chinese energy companies or Romania or Ukraine. I wasn't showing up for these board meetings. I was wasted. So anyway, we'll see. I think the Republicans have their work cut out for them if they're going to, find the evidence that's going to land this. But it is unseemly. Just like Hunter Biden should not have had one of his first jobs be at MBNA, the bank that Biden represented, the credit card company that Biden represented in Delaware. He shouldn't have become a lobbyist for MBNA. He shouldn't have done all of the things that he's done throughout his career. And Joe Biden could have told him, if you want to do this, you're a grown man, but you cannot use my name, and I'm not going to help you along the way because I find this to be repugnant. Joe Biden did not do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and partisan spin is partisan spin. I mean, Himes and Goldman are going to represent their party. This new line of defense feels a bit desperate to me, and especially Himes. It's very rich talking about the Republican Party's lust for retribution, as his own party is championing the multiple indictments against Donald Trump. Again, like it's politics. The lust for retribution is pure politics. And we'll just, before we wrap here, put C3 up on the screen because we've been talking a little bit about the FARA charges. This is Comer on Newsmax saying basically that he thinks Archer's testimony opens up a FARA charge for Hunter Biden because, or actually he's even saying potentially Joe Biden. The Democrats have consistently taken Joe Biden's position, saying he never spoke with anyone Hunter Biden was doing business with, and yet we learned today that over 20 times, in fact, Joe Biden, while he was vice president, spoke with people who were sending the Biden family members these suspicious wires that the banks nor anyone else in America know the purpose of the wires were for. We've talked about FARA here a lot because if you're interested in corruption in Washington, D.C., you go to the FARA database. You can just about any day of the week have a bonanza just looking at who's representing who in Washington and exactly how much money they're making for it. It is basically the quintessential bipartisan grift. It's a World War II era law meant to sniff out people who are spreading propaganda for a foreign agent, foreign country. And you can imagine why that was important at the time that the law was enacted, just for the sake of transparency. They don't make it illegal, but you have to be transparent about it. And so it's been weaponized, I would say, in recent years and against kind of Trump allies. But I think it's important here that whether we're talking about Jared Kushner or Hunter Biden, the more information, the better. The more people are being interrogated on this basis, the better, because these are serious laws. They're in place for a reason. And corruption is, again, like this is the quintessential bipartisan grift. So as far as I'm concerned, the more information we can get on this, the better. I guess I wish the media was as curious about Hunter Biden and I guess potentially Joe Biden, although I agree with you, Ryan. I don't know how much is there. I wish they were as concerned about that as they are about Jared Kushner or Paul Manafort when it comes to Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Tony Podesta. But I guess that's a conversation for another day. Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoint, Points? Go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.